welcome to Roaring Truth with Love. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and it's very exciting to be back together again.
Yes, it's very exciting to be back. Yes.
And we were just talking before about a whole bunch of stuff, actually, and we knew that it was time to do another one, didn't we? We've decided that we're going to do these at least monthly, firstly for our global sister circle, but also just for us to put out, because we know that people have been receiving from what we've been talking about.
Right.
So before we came on, we were talking a lot. Well, this month we've been talking about ascension and symptoms. You know, the different ways we've allowed ourselves to expand as a human. And you, Michelle, were talking about the physical aspect and what you've noticed and experienced with the physical aspect as you've gone on this journey. So can you speak a little bit to that right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, to sort of pick up right where we were talking before we started recording, is I was sharing how the physical aspect has been the most challenging for me. And it's funny because I don't know if you noticed, but just like a couple minutes ago when you were talking, I felt something in my throat and I'm like, so that's why my eyes are like tearing up if I start choking.
Get it out there, girl.
It's like, oh. So yeah, like, you know, I think it depends on the individual journey, right? Like some people sort of more begin in the physical space. Others more start in the emotional space. Either way, there's a spiritual component, right? Like connected to both of those spaces. But eventually, if one is sincere, no matter where you begin, the path will lead you to the other aspect.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was more emotional. It began more emotional, healing from trauma, awakening to the way the world was, things like that. And I always engaged in sort of different matrix ideas of health. Went down sort of different rabbit holes, tried different diets, especially like after I would have the kids, I would try different things because I was nursing them. And so, how can I give them the best breast milk and, just things like that. But that's one thing. And it's one thing, to exercise and to take care of your physical body, but it's another thing to like clear your vessel and actually acknowledge, identify and process the different ways that addictions are playing out through your body, the different ways that we will sort of like leave the body, instead of staying in it through an addiction. And for me, it's been very much about like sort of learning to stay in my body with the feelings and incorporating so many different like health elements like detoxing and parasite cleansing, different colloidals, like, balancing not only the energies in my body, but the elements in my body. And I have found as I've traveled down the path that it becomes more and more necessary to learn more, because I feel when something is unbalanced and something's off. And you and I have had conversations because you're very knowledgeable in those spaces. And so sometimes I'll be like, hey, sister, let's check in here, But yeah, what about you in that respect?
Yeah, I really love what you were saying, and I'll go back to what you first said. If one is sincere, and they will come to, the paths will align. Because I think that some people do just go on that physical journey, and that's what they're here for, and that's great. But if we truly do what you just talked about, and do that emotional clearing, then there will be a point where we will allow ourselves to align and we'll go deeper. So for me, For me, I started with the physical, learning herbal medicine, learning nutrition, becoming naturopath. For me, it was about the physical. I wanted to heal my body from depression. I wanted to heal my mind from depression. There wasn't really a spiritual component to it. And
Mhm.
that's what took me down the path of learning about the physicality. And then I think I've shared before with you and with our circle that when I was actually studying herbal medicine, I was at a bookshop looking for some texts, and this book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace literally jumped off the shelf at me, and I knew that I needed
It fell off the shelf.
to read it. It
Right.
literally fell off the shelf in front of
Awesome.
me. And so I bought it, and it started that awakening within me. But I've been reflecting on it a lot lately in these times. And for me, that emotional component is the clincher that helps our physical body catch up to our spirit, because the spirit is the highest, fastest vibrating part of us, right? And then
Right.
the physical, which is what you said, is the most densest being. And what we want
Right.
to do is we want to bring all of our spirit into our body. And the way that we
Right.
do that is by clearing the emotional body, because it's what sits between the spirit and the body. Because the body thinks and the
Yes.
mind thinks that it's too traumatic to have all of the spirit in its body. When we have trauma, we leave. And
Yes.
so the body, we need to help the body to remember how important it is to embody all of the spirit. And we do that in all of these ways of helping our physical body to actually raise its vibration. And as you said, like that we the more that we embody our spirit, the more that we do actually have to learn about how our physicality can interact with that spirit, because we're vibrating higher and higher the more that we embody our spirit.
Mm-hmm. I love that visual. You said that the emotional body is like in between the
Yeah.
spiritual body and the physical body. Yeah. I think that's a really good visual because it's like it's something that will be a barricade
Yes.
until we learn to process that. And yeah, it's like I definitely I've had so many like spaces on my path, and same with Chris, my partner, where we're like our bodies are not in resonance with our emotional and our spiritual bodies right now.
Yeah.
Like our physical bodies, there it's like it's almost like I can hear myself booming like a lower frequency. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, it's time to level something up here.
Mm.
And then that will usually lead to more learning, more knowledge, because for me, um, it's been more or like organic and more innate for me to like hear through higher self um the spaces that I need to understand emotionally and spiritually.
Mm.
Um the physical aspect I tend to more sort of like research, and then it will sort of like open up or unlock my inner knowing, like trigger knowings in me. I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that. And so then I'll be able to sort of start leading myself more and knowing what I need next. And you never know. Right now Chris is on a B12 kick. He's like, I need some B12, baby. He goes and gets some B12. He takes the B12 this morning. He's like, I feel like I'm on crack. I needed B12 so bad. And it's like the body knows, right? The body
Yeah.
knows, but like we need to trust
Yeah.
that we need to trust our bodies enough, and we need to trust our minds enough that we know we can listen to the body and
Yeah.
hear
Perfect.
answer it.
And it doesn't matter what direction you come from it, we need to trust. And in order to
Yeah.
trust, we need to clear that emotional body, because the
Yes.
reason we don't trust is because of trauma. So
Yes.
the trauma stops us from trusting. The emotional wounds stop us from fully trusting, fully surrendering to spirit. And that's what stops our body. And that aspect of what we call ascension symptoms, that they are just like you said, our physical body is trying to catch up, but it's actually not in alignment with the
Yeah.
rest of our vibration. And
Yeah.
for me, I've found whenever I'm experiencing those, like there was a period in 2018 for 4 months, my knees were so bad that I couldn't kneel. Like I sit in in cross-legged all the time. Couldn't sit
Yeah.
cross-legged. My knees were just so painful. At the
Yeah.
start of that, I was in bed for 3 days. My body was calling me to rest so that I
Yeah.
could embody more of spirit. And
Yes.
I've had that constantly over the years. And I even just had it like 2 days ago this week. I woke up in the morning and I had an experience and realized I need to rest more
Yes.
today. I need to be at rest. Yeah.
Yes.
And because our body needs to rest so that we can allow the space, and you use that word as well, allow the space for spirit to rest in our
Yes.
body.
Yes. I love that. Yes.
It's the aspect of the conscious choice to rest, and then the conscious choice to find
Mhm.
out more about the things that we can do to actually help ourselves raise our vibration.
And I think it's important to point out, because like what you were saying about your knees, I've had so many things like that too, like really intense things. Like on the path, like I know for me, the first few years, I had some really intense healing crises, like I'm
Mm.
dying here, somebody throw me a rope, I'm dying, like really intense, horribly painful healing crises.
Yeah,
But then, and it's not like things don't still, like a couple weeks ago, I remember you and I were talking. I was like, I'm sick, sister. And you're like,
yeah,
hey, you're leveling up. And I was like, no, I'm sick. I'm dying. But, that does happen. But also, I feel what happens now very commonly is what you just said, the need to rest.
mm,
And I love how you said that. To rest, so the spirit rests in the body, and we need to give it a chance to
mm.
do that, to integrate. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we do that, we get stronger, and that, like, words are so important to me. And that, even the word sick, like, I just won't use it anymore, because it's
Yeah.
implying that there's something wrong with me, and there's never
Yeah.
anything wrong. I might be at dis-ease, and isn't it funny how we use that word in
Yeah.
our society now? I
Yeah.
might be at dis-ease, but I'm not sick. My
Right.
body is clearing stuff that needs to be cleared right now. So
Yeah.
I
I
need
love
to
that,
align with
because
it.
you're speaking to that level of trust again in yourself, as
Yeah.
opposed to leading from the trauma, which is really our inner child. And that's why we look to authority then too, right? Like, fix me. It's the
Yeah.
inner child, like crying out for the authority to tell us what's wrong and to put the band-aid on,
Yeah.
as opposed to, parenting ourselves and trusting in our bodies and our own knowings.
Yeah. And the other thing about that authority, tell us what's wrong, it actually still gives us a somebody else to blame.
That's
So
true.
it means we're
Yeah.
still caught in that desire to blame and not take full responsibility, to believe that this is happening to me, not happening from me.
That is a very good point.
Mm.
Yes, that is a very good point. The the truth, once it can be accessed, is that it feels so much more empowering, right? When you have the ability to take self responsibility, and through that emotional work, if you make a mistake, if you mess something up, the knowing that it wasn't a mistake, it brought me exactly what I needed to learn. It's
Yeah.
all learning, it's all an opportunity. It doesn't mean that, sometimes maybe we couldn't have handled something better or whatever, but okay, all right, so I accept that, and now I have an opportunity to, improve the next
Yeah.
time, handle it better the next time, apply what I learned the next time.
Because it'll happen again.
It will. Until you get it right, it will happen again and again and again.
Until you get it right. Which I think is, that leads us into another thing that we were just talking about before, which is the boundaries. The
Yes.
more that you and I have both been on this journey of choosing to open our hearts, despite, and I know when we talked about this in our sister circle a couple of weeks ago, we talked, one of the things that I said is for myself to continue on this journey, I had to be prepared to continue to look for the beauty rather than looking for what was wrong. I needed to be continuing to look for the beauty. At the same time, I need to be aware that there is darkness, because there is darkness, there is evil in the world. But do I want to judge that as bad and the light as good? No. As I move on this path, I want to allow myself to come to a place where none of it is good or bad. It's all just there for the learning, and it exists for us to find that point of alignment within ourselves.
That point of alignment within ourselves, which feels like neutrality, right? It feels like an understanding that that is all out there. But what is meaningful is that I can walk through it and I can create my own reality, my own story, whatever, as I go, instead of aligning with those stories and all the duality of it and the judgments of it. I get to create my own game here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm playing my own game.
Yeah. I'm playing my own game.
And what happens? Yeah. And what happens as I choose to take that perspective is that all of the little areas that I haven't strengthened in my wall, because walls, I can't remember if we've talked about this before on this show, but for me, walls are so important. It's so important to have the wall there. We all think, when we open our hearts, it's like, no, I'm just open to the world and I can take whatever. Well, yeah, eventually we might get to that place. But actually, it's really important for us to have walls, whatever they look like. They're not so these big solid things, but it's a place where I can return to regenerate and rejuvenate, and then step out of again at a time that suits me in order to re-engage the world. And that's what boundaries are. And when we continue to embody more of spirit and we walk on this learning path, we will discover where there's the holes in our wall. We'll discover where, that we need to put reinforcement, because people will try to come in, because I'm playing this game and it's awesome. And I look really strong and I can feel strong to these people, and they want to know what's going on here. So it's up to me, because life doesn't happen to me, it comes from me. It's up to me to find where I need to strengthen that and keep my heart open at the same time.
And you will be shown, because those situations will come in, right? So that you can keep practicing and practicing. I mean, that's certainly what I have found. And that's what we were talking about before. I remember hearing the quote a while ago. I don't remember who said it, if anyone, in particular did, but boundaries are just preferences. And that really resonated with me, because it was like, it comes down to, like, when I think of preferences for myself, it's like what I want my life to look like, And so it's like part of that is, I love connecting. We're humans. We're here to connect. But I have my own vision of what my life is going to look like. And we will meet many others with similar visions, and we can co-create and all of that kind of thing. But if someone else's vision starts coming in and starts telling you what you need to do to make their vision be what they think it should be, or they're asking you to validate, their projections or their perceptions of what they think something should be, that doesn't have anything to do with me at all. That's not my preference. That's not, so that's what I feel like boundaries are like for me. And that doesn't mean I might think about it and I might be like, because maybe I hadn't considered that before. Maybe that's something that I feel good about participating in, you know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm good with that, but then other times I might be like, no, this doesn't have anything to do with my my creation, my preference, my idea for what I'm building, you
Yeah.
know?
And to know our preferences, we need to know what we value and
Yeah.
what qualities are important to us. Like we need to know what for you and I, the first one that pops up is compassion. And so,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And so we need to know what those are within us, and then what we value outside. Both of us, what our children are always top of the priority list when it comes to
Yep.
decision making. So it's really important that we know what our preferences are, so that we don't get sucked out through that hole in the wall. Like, I'm just going to use my terminology, and that's my preference. um,
Yeah.
and so I allow myself to act from that space. And I think as well, it's we've one of the things that James and I used to always talk about a lot was he grew up with this idea of my word is my bond. And so it created this rigidity within him, because if he
Yeah.
would say that I'm going to do something, then he had to follow it through to the very end. But what about the fact that situations change as we're going
Right.
along? Nothing is ever the same as this moment. And so
Right.
what he's learned is that more feminine quality of being able to flow, and to realize that, yes, I said this was the case back here, but actually I wasn't in alignment when I said that I was going to do this. And as I've gone down this path, I've discovered that there's things that have happened that I haven't really been in full alignment with. And now that I know better, I can do better. And so
Yeah.
it's being aware to then go, radio, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling a bit guilty about that. I'm feeling a bit ashamed, whatever. But no, this is where I am this moment, and this is what's important to me. So this is how I'm going to act. And that might hurt people. I
Right.
use that very deliberately. I
Right.
understand it's those people's choice to be hurt, but we impact other people
Yep.
with the decisions that we make.
Right. Exactly. So being cognizant of that as well. And
Mm,
a couple things were coming to mind. I was thinking about how there's sort of this program, which is that, like, you're not allowed to change your mind, right?
yeah.
Like, if like you need to pick something and stick to it, right? And that equates integrity or something like that. And
Mm,
that's actually a lie, because
mm,
that brings me to the second point, like back to the whole sort of game analogy. If you're playing a video game, I'm not really a gamer, so my game analogies are always really lame. Chris always laughs at me. Like,
I'm not either. So,
I'm like, I'm sorry, I do the best I can. I played Super Mario Brothers when I was in high school. Um, but like, if you're playing a game, and you're like, you've got your backpack on and you're going through some forest, and some evil creature pops out of the woods behind you, um, you have every right to turn and start going down this path, or stay and battle the creature,
wow.
whatever. But you get to choose. You get to choose.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's all free will, and that to me feels really exciting, because it's like that means that anything that comes into your field, because lots of things come into your field that you didn't necessarily create. We're interacting with energy all day long in every way, shape, and form, right? And so if something
Mhm.
comes into your field and it's like, whoa, what's this? Then, like, you get to choose how you interact with it. And sometimes you might make a choice and you start going down that path, and then things change. Something else comes into your field. Maybe you change because you expand, you grow, and you're like, maybe this isn't really resonating anymore, and that's okay. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But you're so right. There's a lot of programs that come up in that space, a lot of matrix overlay for
Yeah.
us to identify, like the guilt you said, shame you said, just like that self-judgment.
Yeah.
um yeah, so it's really useful, I think.
Yeah, and self-forgiveness is so important on that path, because it's like
Yeah.
I get to this point and I realize, oh, actually, I don't want to be on this path anymore. I need to I'm at the fork in the road, which way? And it's that element of, okay, cool. I did what I did because of the knowledge that I have. But right now I have more knowledge, or different knowledge. So I'm going to take a different path. And there's nothing wrong with that. I
Right.
forgive myself for any wrong that I think that I did. And
Right.
I move forward and I learn from it in this moment.
Right.
And,
Right.
that's boundary setting with self as
Yeah.
well, because
Yes.
I'm learning how strong I can actually be by opening my heart to new possibilities.
Yeah. That's so true. And
Mm,
back to what you said before too about how sometimes it has the potential to hurt other people. Well, part of love, and we've talked about this a lot in our other videos, right? And and you already spoke to this sort of, but I just wanted to sort of, expand on it a little bit.
yeah,
Is that, like we choose how we respond to the choices that other people make about their lives,
yeah,
you know, about their lives. And
yeah.
and absolutely some
That's
of our
hard sometimes.
it's very hard, and especially when our relationships are super interconnected and like sort of
Mm,
complicated, and it can be very difficult, but ultimately, um for me, it's always a reflection of like how well do you allow yourself to make choices?
mhm.
Like if I'm feeling a projection from you, or like you're trying to force me or control me to do something that you think I should do, then I wonder if you do that to yourself about yourself,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, absolutely. And that speaks to the element of acceptance, doesn't it? The element
Yeah.
of, I accept the choices I make because I know that I'm making them from my priorities, from my preferences.
Right.
I'm on this path where I've created the boundary around myself, and I'm actively looking for those cracks
Yeah.
where the energy is still coming in and I need to reinforce a little. But at the same time, I need to keep my heart open. And
Yeah.
as I keep my heart
Yes.
open, then some of that's going to come in. And as it comes in, I need to work with it and feel the feelings that it brings into me, let them move through me, express them, and then continue to stand at the center here. And
Yeah.
then rest for as long as I need to, and then keep looking out. And what is it? Chop wood, carry water. After
Yeah.
enlightenment, chop wood, carry
Yeah.
water.
Carry water. Yeah, and then sometimes there's discernment too, because wasn't it you and I who were talking
uh,
about, we are talking about, I think it was us, sister, about how it doesn't mean I don't care if I have boundaries. I think we might have
yeah,
had that discussion
yeah,
like on one of our posts or something. Like just because I have boundaries, it
yeah.
doesn't mean I don't care. So, sometimes it's like, and this has been more recent for me, and this is what you and I were talking about before, and I know you've had similar experiences recently where it's like sometimes I'm like, you know what? There's actually not even emotions for me to process in that place because that's actually all yours. There
Yes.
used to be so many emotions for me in that space because what would
Mm,
happen is I would get really angry and I would get triggered, and it would be like, you can't control me. And so there was so much to come up in that space, which is why I was so emotionally reactive, right? Because it was
yeah.
all in my body, held in my body, so many years of that. But now I'm just kind of like, and I'm not saying something won't get me, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
something, hey, something could nag me tomorrow that is still in me to process. But I have been noticing that of late, a lot of times I'm like, you know what? That's like not even my game. I'm good. I don't have anything to process in that space. Like that's
Yeah,
yours, you
yeah,
know?
definitely. Yep,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
discernment too, but that's all part of the path, you know?
And that's what I was going to say. That is part of the path, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
we need to go through that fight. The fight is necessary for us to emerge from
Yeah.
it's like the seedling coming out of the
Yeah.
soil. It's
Yeah.
necessary, but then once we've fought that, we're out here and the sunlight's shining on us. Oh, I just have to let the sunlight in and I'll grow.
Right. Right.
That was a good little visual. So what would you say, because we've decided that we want to make these videos a bit shorter, what would you say is the has been one of the most important things for you on this path of ascension, self-awareness, growth? Or let's not even say growth, beingness.
Yeah. Yeah. Beingness. Can I give you 3, but super nutshelled?
Yes.
Because yeah, we do want to keep these short. So, and they all
I'd be
kind of
impressed if you gave me one.
I know it's hard, right? So that's a challenge for myself, though. That is a challenge. So I would say the first thing that has been super meaningful is the acceptance of the idea of not the idea, the acceptance of the truth and the knowing that everything is an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. That has been huge. Like, you know, for my own growth, for my own embodiment, my own clearing, you know, which to me is very intertwined with alchemy.
Mm.
The second thing would be um, the growing belief in myself and using my voice and believing that my voice is important.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's important that I use it, because, you know, that old fear, like, oh, you're going to hurt someone or say the wrong thing, or understanding that, you know, if we're having these ideas, it's important to voice them. They're there for a reason, and believing in ourselves enough to actually voice them. And then you know, just where that leads us in terms of our own paths, like where, like what we experience in that game then from that, right? Because now we're brave, right? And now we know who we are. So it's like, where does that take us? That's like so exciting, because it takes us all these places and you're like, whoa, I can't believe I'm doing this now, you know? So that's really, really exciting. And then the third thing for me would be the gorgeous embodiment of the divine feminine. The divine masculine, the work in that space has been very meaningful for me as well. But the divine feminine has been heart-wrenchingly gorgeous, and it's been very intertwined with my heart opening for my sisters, the mothers, the grandmothers, all of that, the experiences that I have had with other sisters who are doing the same thing. And I feel like we're sort of, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel, because it's been this way. It was this way before in the past, you know. But
Yeah.
we're bringing it back. We're anchoring that divine sisterhood, motherhood, whatever you want to call it, back, you know, back into the earth. And to have an opportunity to do that with so many women who really, like, genuinely, sincerely are doing the work, you know, like for real, you know, because there is a lot of toxicity out there too. And I had that coming into my field a few years back because I needed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So how about
Um,
you?
you might have just seen me do this because I'm
Yeah.
up in a loft and the boys came in downstairs. The men came in downstairs and they were making a bit of a ruckus. I agree with all of that, particularly about the divine feminine and the connection with women. I've found that in the last I really feel this sense of community so strongly now, not just physically, but I also feel it globally, you know, and with our sister circle, it's just been so magnificent for you. I mean, you and I is the perfect example. We're to be so connected to another human that you've never actually met physically. And so that's so, it's so powerful to me. But, and the other thing that I would add to everything that you just said for me has been the embodiment and the really bringing presence into my life. And because it's when I'm present that I hear what my body has to say. I feel the little nuances that, you know, and you and I were talking about covert and subtle and those words earlier. It's when I can feel those energies at play when I'm present. And the presence allows me to be with my intuition. It allows me to be fully in myself, which means that I've got all of myself here for whoever it is that I'm interacting with. And the other person, even if they don't know it, they can feel that at that time as well. So that's, for me, probably been the biggest thing as well, because that's helped me to understand my own boundaries. It's helped me to understand where my holes are. It's helped me to communicate better, and to use my voice in a way to, to hear that this person doesn't like what I've got to say. Well, I'm going to discern that this is actually important for me to say this because of this reason,
Right.
this reason, this reason, and this is my preference.
Right.
So,
Yes.
yeah, that's
I feel like
probably for.
that's huge. Yes. Good one,
Mm.
sister. Totally. Yeah. And in some ways, I feel like that one's the most challenging,
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like,
absolutely. It is, especially
yeah,
when you've got so many things going on. And my mind is really good at thinking of lots of things at once. And
yeah.
so
Very busy brains. Yeah.
and so it actually takes, even still after all these years, it still takes me practice to get into that space of being present. But
Yeah.
every time I do it, well, I can do it much faster than I used to be able to do it now. But every
Yes.
time I can, I realize, wow, I'm a powerful being when I'm fully present within myself.
Sometimes I will notice, like the resistance that I'll feel to meditation, for example, like, I'll have like a really crazy day and I'll be like, okay, I need to meditate tonight, even if it's not like my normal time that I would do it. Like, I need to do this tonight. And I'll keep like putting it off and like not like just not wanting to do it. And like, and then like if you just discipline yourself enough and you actually sit there and you do it, it's like literally 10 minutes and you're like a different person. It's like, oh, you've gone from human to human, like HUEMAN. It's like, yeah, it's funny,
Absolutely.
the resistance sometimes.
The
Yeah.
resistance. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
I feel like this is awesome. How long have we been talking for this
Oh,
recording?
I
Can
reckon
you
we've
tell?
probably been about 40 minutes.
Okay, so we're good.
I'm thinking.
We're good. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And we're well, I'm just going to speak for myself. It's really awesome to be back.
Yes, it is. It's awesome to be back, and we're gonna try to make this a little more frequent, aren't we? I'm feeling
Yeah.
that.
We'll see how we go. Let's do
We'll
that.
see. We're gonna give it our Girl Scout try. Yeah.
All right.
But it,
I love you. I love you all for listening. Thanks.
yeah, I love you.
See ya.
See ya.